Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Small Firm Town Hall. This session will run for approximately 60 minutes with time for questions and answers in the middle and end of the program. You'll be seeing our speakers' videos in a small square in the corner of your screen with the presentation in the full window. You have the ability to control the size and placement of the video of our presenters and may toggle back and forth between the two throughout the webinar. As the Town Hall, please feel free to turn on your video and join the presenters. We do ask that you keep yourself muted throughout the presentation portion of our Town Hall. Questions and participation throughout the session are encouraged. If you have a content question for the presenters, use the chat box at the bottom of your screen. Please note the information provided during this webinar does not and is not intended to constitute legal advice. Instead, all information, content, and materials available during this webinar are for general informational purposes only. At this time, it is my pleasure to introduce our moderator for today's webinar, Robert Stanziel.
Thank you, Molly. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Maintaining Your Virtual Practice. It's my pleasure to introduce our panelists today. Mike Anderson of Abstract Architecture PC, John Fry of Nexus Creative, and Bonnie Singh of D2D Green Design. First up today, we're going to be talking about the practice and how COVID-19 affects the small firm. And Mike is going to discuss how to keep our projects fresh. Michael?
Thanks, Rob. So we've been focusing on a couple of things. Again, we're a smaller practice, primarily focused on residential architecture. So we have a lot of interaction, personal interaction with our clients in their homes. Obviously, that's just not possible right now. Early on, my inkling was that we just wouldn't have people that were going to want us to meet with them in person. I have been surprised in that we have still had the ability to get into people's houses to do some field work. But we've been following their direction. We've been following their rules of engagement. So it's allowed us to continue practicing. Normally, with a residential project, we would meet with the client at least every other week, especially during the initial design phases. Once we move into more of a production phase, it's not as regular, but there's a certain amount of personal interaction with these people. It keeps them invested in the project. It keeps us moving along on a schedule. So obviously there was going to be a hole that needed to be filled in some ways. What we've done is utilize technology. Just like this presentation, we are doing a lot more Zoom meetings. We also have a lot of casual, if a client has a quick question, we're usually available via text or email anyway. We've just opened up the option for people to have a quick FaceTime conversation. There just really seems to still be that need for a face-to-face time, even if it's through the digital divide. So we've increased that online interaction with clients. It pretty much, for the time being, replaced our in-person meeting. The big part of what that in-person meeting did was keep the person invested in their own project. Now, again, everyone has so much going on outside of an architectural project right now that it's very easy to lose them. Very easy to lose a continuation of the project. So I've increased the regularity of our email correspondence with them. It may be as simple as, hey, here's your updated floor plan we've been working on. What do you think of these kitchen cabinets as an option? We've recommended more phone interaction with the clients. Call us if you have a question. Typically we would have just say, hey, shoot me an email, because then I can respond to it at any point in time. One thing we all have a lot of right now is time. If it makes a client feel a little bit better that they've just spoken with you, let them jump on your personal call and have a conversation with them. What we've also done is we've increased the amount of product and production and detailing items that we're sharing with the clients. Architecture has always had the feeling that it's a little bit of a mystery. What do we do that gets us to this end product? We're kind of explaining that and giving them a little bit more information. We're working on your kitchen cabinets, and here's a whole bunch of poles. We would normally pick this one. We really like it. It's a pretty looking pole, but here's the other options you have. And you feed a little bit more of the conversation. So what we're doing in general is just not taking for granted all of the decisions that we had made in-house from a design-wise, and we may still make the same conclusion in the end, but we're involving the client a little bit more.
Very good. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it. Very informative. Next, John is going to walk us through how to encourage your clients. John?
So, in developing talking points and discussion threads in a town hall format, I might add, because we're not coming to you with preaching profound insight. We're all in the same boat. We're all sharing the same challenges. My beginning talking point was staying positive. And many of you may be thinking, well, that's moronically simple, John. We're all trying to stay positive. But I do think it bears emphasis that staying positive in a leadership role with clients yields results. And I think they want a confidence level and want to sense foresight and insight to the degree that we can offer into the future. And, depending on what your bandwidth of clients are, they're all unique. All the positive talking points are unique. Some are universal. Part of the universal notions are going to be that we've all spent a lot of time in the places we live over the past, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, depending on what your sequestering pattern has been. But when I speak to clients that we're both currently engaged with and potentially going to be engaged with, they all share a level of thought about their living circumstances that they probably never thought about. They spend so much time in their daily patterns of merging work and family and pets and technology and personal work patterns that they've realized where their place of residence, whether it's a multifamily scenario or a single family scenario or something in between, how that reinforces stay-at-home work patterns, either in a positive way or a negative way. And so to a certain extent, they've thought at a level that we tend to introduce to them in traditional circumstances of architect-client relationships. But I do feel like staying positive at a very fundamental level telegraphs to clients. Clearly, sophisticated clients see the opportunities that are on the other side of this. And if it's the most fundamental opportunity that money available to either single family residential clients or institutional clients is going to be cheaper than it was 6 months ago. And that's a big incentive. The other notion is staying positive within your community. I feel like in our run up to this town hall discussion, all of us have shared personal experiences over the past 6 weeks. And national, state, regional, local governments recognize their part in economic recovery on the other side of this, or currently, before we get to the other side. As it relates to us, there are going to be opportunities that are reemphasized, whether they've been funded municipal projects or public-private partnerships for affordable housing, that are going to be moved to the head of the pack. what the funding looks like in 2021, 2022, we don't know. But municipalities and governments that have had funding in place for a wide range of projects are realizing that they need to initiate and gain momentum towards lending to an economic recovery. The other notion is that where land use approvals processes in our region, and really all over New York State, I suspect, are challenging. Let's face it, we all recognize the layers of land use approval process is complex compared to many regions of the country, and is by its very nature somewhat slow and not agile. So, you know, a month ago, all of us, I suspect, and in dialogue with clients, are concerned about projects that were in or beginning the land use approval process really becoming mired or becoming idle, because land use boards are struggling to recalibrate how they implement their approval process meetings. Well, I think I'm happy to report, I'm interested to hear the global dialogue here, that most municipalities, certainly some municipalities historically that I'm familiar with or have experience with, who were notoriously slow, are miraculously sensitive to the notion that they need to be agile and they need to respond. And I've been very appreciative to it, where in specific instances where I've cautioned a client that, look, we're entering this application phase at what appeared 4 weeks ago is the most inopportune time, and that initial interface with a planning department or building official was probably going to be very challenged. Normally it would be challenged. I found that it was remarkably agile. And in some instances, we've had interface with municipalities and their planning departments in a much more responsive manner. I think as related to how we as a profession and as a state organization, national organization, lobby our state, regional, local governments to think about, in a positive way, how they're going to contribute, how they can contribute to re-energizing the economy. I think it's important for us as a profession, as a collective group, to interface with our local officials. And I've also found that many of them are very interested in having casting a broad net of perspective and advice, and are, like all of us, have become very comfortable with utilizing Zoom as the interface format. So.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it very much. Yeah, I think it varies. For myself, I find that dealing with different municipalities, some of them are very cooperative at this time. Others are just non-existent. And, you know, we've had a few meetings via Zoom with some planning board meetings and coastal zone management meetings, but some of the larger cities haven't done anything with any sort of outreach. So it's incredible. But anyway, at this time, Mike and John are going to discuss something that I think a lot of us are dealing with, and those are the challenges of technology and some potential solutions to those challenges. Mike, John?
John, want me to go first?
Take it away, Michael.
Okay. Was that your slide or my slide? So for us, the technology involved with working from home, this whole transition was actually part of an ongoing process that we were working on anyway. You know, I have a younger firm, um, whether they're home because they have to be for, child-related care or sick child or any personal reason, we have a higher likelihood of a request for, the ability to work from home or the need to work from home. So it's remote access was something that I was looking at even before this whole situation came along. Part of that was ensuring that we were implementing the right technology for us. I've spoken with a couple of people who are, more informed on the topic than I am. Took what they had told me and mentally figured out how I would apply it to the practice of architecture. My firm is still, heavily design orientated. Most of our projects still start with, a hand sketch. But we produce like 99% of the firms out there on a digital platform. So there's that transition time from hand production to computer production. And there was always, which always opens the door to a large amount of work to be done remotely. My conversations with colleagues in particular who have spent more time working remote than me opened my eyes to the ability to, not only offer this as a welcome alternative to help my employees through, personal situations or whatever, but the productivity of it that comes to the firm as a whole. So we were already in the process of choosing that technology. We had decided upon implementing a VPN network that would allow, what a VPN does is allows off-site employees to remotely access our computer network securely. And their home computer basically operates their work computer through this network. It actually, and you can control your access points through the VPN. So, there's a level of security there. Our project drives, which are in the basement right below the office, they can be accessible. And it's basically as if you're working in the office. So that was the decision we had made. And then COVID-19 came along, and that kind of sped up our transition to this phase. We followed the governor's guidelines in reducing our staff right down to 100% of people have to be out of the office. And at that point, we're like, well, what do we do? It's a little different for me. The office is part of my building where we live. So I'm still technically working from home. We did not have our VPN system set up, and we had to make some immediate temporary measures. The one thing I did try to do is utilize either existing technologies that we already had in place, so I wasn't expanding cash flow unnecessarily that wasn't going to continue on to the future, or utilize a subscription system that we could terminate at any point in time. Because again, we don't know how long this, state pause is going to be and how long we'll be working remotely. Obviously, and as John mentioned, we've become much more reliant on online services like Zoom and FaceTime on our phones to remain connected with our clients. We also utilized some software pieces that we already had in. We communicate within the office almost, like an in-office text message system using Microsoft Teams. That was already part of the software that was included in our subscription to Microsoft for Word and Excel and all the project, all the production software that we use anyway. So it was really just implementing the connection. The one real expense we had was a subscription to ConnectWise. I did look at a couple of remote access platforms, and we were recommended ConnectWise by a couple of different people and implemented it right away. There was a 14-day free trial that we utilized. And I'd initially thought of it as a backup plan should the VPN not work. We just haven't been able to install the VPN server yet. So ConnectWise has become our primary virtual connection to the office. It is a subscription service. We can terminate it at any point in time, so it's fiscally responsible. But it does give you, it gives my employees who are sitting in their home immediate access to their computers as if they were, sitting here in the office. And to date, it seems to have worked well. We went through, I personally went through a lot of conversations to make sure that this was the right process for my firm. It may not be the right process for every firm, but for a firm of my size, heavily digital in our production beyond initial design, and highly interconnected with a younger workforce that is adept with technology, it seemed like the best option for us. What I have been pleasantly surprised and made me question my own age-related stereotypes. Several of our consultants who I would consider personally to be, that older, I'm sketching in my notebook generation, have been extremely accessible through the same technology. And we've been lucky in that several of our projects, which would have stalled otherwise, we've been able to continue operating on. And that, and again, that's been good for us because it's allowed us to stay working. But again, I think the basis of those, the study and the background work I did to make those decisions was part of, the whole process that got us to where we are successfully in this current situation, now. I'll hand over to John.
Well, I suspect at this point, I'm fairly confident everyone on this town hall session has solved their remote working scenarios, either marginally or successfully or in some manner. Our track at Nexus Creative follows a similar storyline to Michael's. A year and a half ago, we sort of recast a firm structure in a new direction, which really was embracing remote work scenarios for a wide bandwidth of reasons. It felt like it was a new compass point in firm structure, firm dynamics. We stumbled across Zoom by accident 18 months ago, quite frankly, and quickly became big Zoom advocates. In fact, I had a client who bought stock in Zoom, true story. And it wasn't so much, clearly we did not have a vision of where we are today, but the transition 6 weeks ago to accommodating the requirements of COVID-19 work scenarios was seamless for us. And I am the last person to talk in depth about technology configurations. But from a broad perspective, my wife is a partner in a small landscape architecture firm in the city, and where we were utilizing fairly rudimentary, low-cost, cloud-based file sharing. My wife's firm, like many of you, I'm sure, were utilizing server-based hardware, and where our transition was literally seamless. Literally, we had already set up our homework scenarios to accommodate flexibility. I watched them struggle for over a week, recasting and resetting their scenarios. I don't know what that means, going into the future. I feel like we're all going to be different in our practice models to some extent. We're going to come out on the other side of this. I'm not here to suggest that we have solved every technological problem, have breached every potential security issue. But I sense that our transition from server-based to either cloud-based or some hybrid scenario is going to be the dominant lane in the future and going forward. I think many of us have also struggled with, the simple elements of Wi-Fi or Ethernet connections, or sharing, a limited bandwidth of Wi-Fi signals with an active family who's still going to school, and partners who are professionals also, who are demanding lots of bandwidth. So part of infrastructure advocation in our communities, or advocacy, there's been a quiet lane for many communities to ramp up their broadband internet access. And now I think everybody realizes the importance. I mean, I think it's fair to say that the internet infrastructure in our, across the country has held up pretty well, has performed remarkably well under a demand that nobody foresaw. But if I circle back to having incremental dialogue with community elected and village managers who recognize the importance of thinking into the future and addressing broadband internet access as a community as an important community infrastructure, right, is something that we can speak to as a profession. I mean, I think many professions are speaking to that. Our remote workspace scenarios in the future are going to likely change dramatically over the next 6 months. And I would be interested, as a part of this town hall platform, I'm most interested to hear what the sharing is going to be, or the Q&A period is going to be in this regard.
I got a question from Marco related to access software and service our firm is utilizing. We already had a high bandwidth commercial internet access, Marco, through Spectrum, Time Warner in some markets. Again, utilizing a software that like John can be cloud-based, and we do have cloud storage should we need it. One of the necessities for uninterrupted work was high bandwidth. We were smart about it, and I believe so, in that we waited till the local provider had upgrades available for us. We get a high-speed internet at a relatively low price. From the software standpoint, Microsoft, the standard software that came, without Word, Excel, PowerPoint presentation, Microsoft has a very robust remote access point. The Microsoft Team communication system is a perfect example. Occasionally the guys, the girls, computers the screen's popped on right now. I can see Autumn typing something, and it literally pops up on my screen, milliseconds after she hits enter. So I know it's very robust in its ability to communicate quickly, and that's what I personally am missing the most during this pause period, is the interaction with the people in the office. So it's good that just standard software systems. ConnectWise is the same. Part of the reason we picked it was the simplicity of the platform, and that sped up the ability to process with it. I hope that answers your question, Marco. If you want to email me, I believe my address will be at the end of it, and I can give you some more specifics. And to Joe, yes, we are. We work in Revit, and we have utilized BIM 360 on particular projects. We don't have a large client base that actually utilizes it. But again, it's part of our technology package that allows us to work quickly.
Michael, thank you very much. And John, appreciate it. We're going to move on to a question that had been previously submitted. Molly had sent out a survey last week. I'm sure some of you responded to it. And there were some questions that were selected from there. The first one is this for our panelists. If this economic downturn proceeds beyond the reopening of the economy, how can our profession not just survive, but help drive some of the stimulus money towards building a better world after the economy rebounds? Question. Folks?
So this is Vani.
Bonnie?
I would say sustainability would probably be one thing that we have to focus on post what's going on, because it has become even more critical at this point, given we are in a very, I would say, quiet, not busy, lockdown type environment, and carbon emissions have only gone down by 5.5%. So even after we think about our carbon footprint has reduced greatly, but total carbon footprint has not. The other way to think about it now that we will be more indoors, in that aspect, we have to understand that indoor air quality makes a big difference as well. So more going towards sustainability would be something we need to focus on more so at this point than anything else.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Yeah, I'll chime in too. I would agree. We're seeing almost like the earth healing approach. People haven't seen the Himalayas in 10 years can now look at them from the streets of Nepal. This seems to be almost a great opportunity for a social reset as well. And as we all know, the profession of architecture is a very large social player. And I believe we will find that it's going to be more incumbent upon us as a profession, both small and large firms, to be more sustainably mindful. Not only in the physical world realm, but in the social and economic world as well. I believe there will be a social impact of this. And people are starting to realize what, there's a large population out there in the world where this, this home lockdown, no social interaction, can't go buy food from a restaurant is a daily norm. And then there's a large group of people who are finding out what it's like for the socially disadvantaged, and hopefully we all learn something from that. I don't think as a profession there's one more attuned to social well-being than architecture. So again, I think there's an opportunity for us as practitioners to really play a positive role in where the profession and where the world goes to from here.
Great, thank you very much. We had another question that had been submitted previously. What support are we giving ourselves as an industry to get through this? And how are we going to structure ourselves moving forward beyond COVID-19? Anyone?
Well, I'd like to suggest that when as a collective professional organization, the AIA not only is the voice of our organization, but it's the gravity that we rally around to address questions like this. And I think this town hall is manifests itself as the beginning, as one of the many beginning points for us to discuss collectively. Really, hopefully, we're going to have the discussion that how are we going to restructure? What does this look like at the other side? And I think there's been some light sharing here so far in terms of how our profession, what was already trending before we landed in this circumstance in terms of restructuring and what agility might look like. We certainly learned, the term resiliency, what that meant 2 months ago means something different today, I feel like. And so, we're all becoming more resilient in a way, responding to a biblical crisis. So, I don't know that we have time to suggest or exchange all of the realities of what that question addresses, but there are going to be more of these, and I think we speak to those.
Thank you, John.
Bob, there's a question from David about how we're dealing with on-site verification. I'd like to answer that one.
Certainly.
Dave, we have a couple of different projects in the office right now. We have an apartment building that is probably about half full. We've been working with the building management to get inside and get what verification work we needed to get. We have stayed well clear of those apartments that are occupied, and maintaining social distancing. But we've also made sure. Now I do most of the primary and field work for my office. I made sure that I've washed my hands before I go in. I wear a mask. Within my truck, I keep disinfectant wipes to clean down after I've gone through a building. But I make sure I'm not bringing in anything as well. And that the second part of it is smaller clients. We're working with them. If I need to get some field measurements to add to my information, my initial question is, are they comfortable with us coming in? If they are, we follow their direction. I leave my shoes outside. I make sure I've got my mask on. Whatever they require to feel comfortable for us to come in. I do have a couple who were more than welcome for me to come in and do some field work. They took the time to take their kids and the dog for a walk around the block while I was in there, and I texted them once I was done, and we had a pleasant social distance conversation at the property line about what I needed to do. I've also had a couple clients who have been more than able to, I needed a couple of quick verification measurements. The one husband and the other, a different client, the wife, they had a blast FaceTiming with me to get the dimensions. Again, it's part of that, just keeping them involved in the project. People want to help, and that's so that we haven't actually seen any major difficulty in getting information that we We've just been following the direction of the people who we need the information from.
Yeah, there are a number of ways to get around that, I guess, Michael, right? Just
But
some-
there is a
Right.
difference, in public practice, at least people who do more public projects. We do correctional facilities and higher education, and we are not able to go on. So it also depends if those facilities are open for you to go and access and do the work. If they are not open for access, then you are not able to do that. If they are, we are also trying basically on public side of work, trying to get the information from the client itself at this point, through different video conferencing type of scenarios. But it's a little bit more difficult on public projects.
Thank you, Bonnie. We have a number of questions, but I'm going to see how many we can get to at the end because I want to move along because we have a lot more program here. So in our next section, our resident work from home expert, Bonnie Singh, is going to discuss work-life balance and motivation and networking. Bonnie?
So I would not call myself an expert because I'm yet to get to that work-life balance myself. I know that people get emails from me at 3 a.m. in the morning, but that's just the way life is. So work-life balance, obviously this situation has taught us that architecture practice has become much more accepting of virtual practice than it was some time ago. We started with our virtual practice about 7 years ago, and it has been very successful. I have really not had a single moment where I felt, oh my God, what have I put myself into? We have a co-share office location where if we need to meet with clients or would need to meet with our team, we meet once a week if we need to. Otherwise, all our meetings are done virtually, even before this pandemic. And it's a great situation. I started that when my daughter was very little. So my situation was that I wanted to give her enough time. She was in daycare from pre-K to fourth grade for 10 and a half, 11 hours at a time. And that just like a really bad mom. And I was like, this is not working. I do want to continue working on my career. I do want to be a successful architect. At the same time, I don't want to sacrifice my family. So, and I know a lot of us are in that situation, pandemic or no pandemic, we have somebody at home that we might need that work-life balance to work from home for. So there are different ways to achieve that, but I have noticed for me, nighttime working works better, but it obviously not something everybody works for everybody. But a dedicated space for work is most important. I have been in a situation where I didn't have the dedicated space when I just started with a residential office or with a work from home office. And that was the biggest problem. As soon as I separated my space to be a separate office space, it changed a lot. It gave me a physical separation, if you may, from everything else happening. And that helped a lot in saying, okay, it's time for me to plug off, maybe go watch a movie with family or something, grab dinner with family. So it gave me that physical assistance and work-life balance. As everybody knows, architecture practice is not a 40-hour thing. You can be working anywhere, to 80 hours a week. And at that point, how do you create that work-life balance? Certain articles that I've been reading is to also how to create that motivational space within our remote work environment. And most articles suggest obviously a separate space, but also creating, having spaces with tall ceilings because that encourages creativity. Spaces that would give you a sense of creativity, maybe creating your space in that way. So that definitely does help with that encouragement of working. I feel one thing is very important for those who have employees. I have 5 employees, and having trust in your employees is very important. That keeps them motivated. And John and Mike has been talking about this positive energy and thought of positivity. In my language, we call it Chardi Kala. That means the art of living with positive high spirits. And I think that's very important. If you have that, your employees are going to have that, your team is going to have it. So please, by all means, the motivation comes from that art of Chardhi Kala, which is high positive spirits.
Thank you, Bonnie. Appreciate it. Very informative. Lastly, today we're going to be discussing firm culture. Mike, please tell us about the best ways to keep in touch with colleagues and why this is so important. Mike?
So we have two approaches. Out in office contact. Obviously, we're missing that. Currently, and I'm a human. I miss having people in the building. We have implemented again Zoom technology. It's a wonderful thing. We're having happy hours now. I noticed that it's really something to work towards at the end of the week. I initially just thought, great, it's a cool gimmick. Let's get together, have a beer remotely. It's really just a nice break from reality. I think one of the things we're really missing is other people. This will be the first week that I've invited a couple of other friends who are in the profession to join us. Because if I'm missing personal interaction or interaction with my colleagues, they are too. And I'm, again, there's something, part of the rationale of having this town hall format with the videos of all the participants was, we are a collaborative profession. We interact with people. This ability to see other people at the other end of the digital connection, I think, is emotionally important for us. Even just from the simple, realization that people are okay. I personally care about the people who work for me. Just to see them and to see their family and friends around them, it's helping me emotionally. From a professional standpoint, I really feel like that, the network and the support structure from colleagues, it's not only important now while we're dealing with this, I feel at the other side of this, it's going to be important as well. And I believe we're going to, cherish those interactions a little bit more. Hopefully we're all going to become more involved. Whether it's AIA events that get us out into a social setting or it's webinars and town halls like this. Again, I think there's an emotional network there beyond the professional that is going to help us. And so I see an increased importance on it. I also believe that we're going to have some ebbs and flows in the profession. Unfortunately, it's highly likely that some small companies are not going to make it because of the economic downturn. I believe we have to try and support each other, and whether it's information sharing like this town hall, or even going beyond that, professional support. If a project's not good for me, who in my network is it good for? Let me recommend them. I also see the potential for more professional collaboration on projects. We are, as a profession, we're instinctually very possessive of our work. We are in our own minds, we are the best designers we know. But I think there's the opportunity for teamwork between companies or individuals, especially in small business circles, that will support both organizations and the profession prosper as well.
Thank you, Mike. Bonnie's now going to discuss team building, collaboration within the firm. Bonnie?
So one thing that we realized early on when we went virtual is how do we stay connected? Like Mike mentioned, having somebody on the other side of the digital world is obviously the best for us. So we have been doing the same thing, WebEx, Zoom, howsoever we try to connect with our team. The other ways that we have actually been researching, we haven't done a whole lot of them, but we have done few. Virtual games, there's a whole list of free virtual games. There's paid ones as well, but there's a whole list of free virtual games that you can play with your team. Um, you can play Hangman, you can play Pictionary. There's a lot of different bingo, whatever works. So there's a lot of virtual games that you can play. We just recently, actually over the weekend, hosted a private meditation yoga session for our team and their families. And it was very well attended. Everybody from our team attended and their families, their kids also attended. This was for Kundalini Yoga, and it was my first time trying this with my team, but everybody liked it. I got messages after from every single person saying how good it was for them, especially during this time, because the practice was focused on stress relief and team building and immunity. So it was like all encompassing of what we are going through right now, and everybody appreciated that. So so there is a lot of opportunities. Happy hour, just like I mentioned, we are going to have our first virtual dinner with our team this coming weekend. So we are trying those things for at least team building activities. It's a little bit more challenging, I feel, for small businesses because our resources are also limited to that aspect. Um, Regarding collaboration tools, we usually collaborate a lot of our things through Microsoft Teams or through a simple spreadsheet that basically gets shared during our Zoom or WebEx meeting. Or we use Citrix file share system to do some collaboration. But we are investing into either Asana or Monday.com. We're actually doing demos for them right now to see if there is better ways in Microsoft Teams or whatever we are practicing with Citrix. Just because it's just the follow-up of team is becoming a little bit more difficult during this time. We have realized. So those are many tools available for collaboration, but I know those two are a little bit more relevant for our field than
Bonnie, thank you very much. I just want to mention this time we have some excellent questions that have been submitted, and I'm going to take the liberty of saying that if we don't get to some of these questions today, which we're not going to, Molly, Emma, that they can be sent to Bonnie, John, and Michael, and maybe they can answer them privately, because we have a few more topics here in our program and just about 5 minutes to go in our seminar here, our webinar. So John is going to talk to us now about how to be a virtual mentor and to discuss how to inspire during these times. John, briefly, thank you.
Well, so if we're capturing the full, as much as we can, the full bandwidth of what this remote scenario has yielded, we all recognize, because I've had this discussion not only within this town hall presenting team, but with many of you, the continuation of traditional mentoring processes. And it's a challenge. We have young staff. I'm sure many of you are working with younger professionals or emerging professionals. So the interface time and the way we interface or have traditionally interfaced in studios and face-to-face has changed significantly. Again, I don't want this to sound overly simplistic, but maintaining a positive, encouraging demeanor is very important, clearly. And many of the younger members of our profession are frightened, right? And many of us older members of this profession have been through a range of cycles. So we understand the ups and downs, we've experienced the ins and outs. Younger staff have not. So I think emphasizing mentoring or the time that you've devoted previously to mentoring or quiet thought now more than ever, perhaps, because we are at home or in wherever you are working relatively undisturbed in terms of peripheral activity. Be mindful of that, emphasize that. I do think that this remote work scenario has offered unique time periods for encouraging younger staff to expand their skill sets. And however you can facilitate that, promote, encourage. And I think part of the mentoring process for us as a profession and other professions is looking ahead. What are the internship scenarios that many of us accommodate during the summers? I don't know what that's going to look like, but I do think we have to think about and discuss it. Whether we're going to, have remote internships this summer. I think we certainly are prepared to do that. I'm happy to report that just prior to joining this town hall session, I was on a review team for a second-year architecture class at Texas A&M via Zoom. So that process is continuing. There are young people in architecture schools who are still dedicated, all working at home for the most part, in their own challenging circumstances. They were encouraged to see a group of professionals from around the country be interested in their academic work in uncertain times. So.
Great. Thank you, John. I just, in the essence of time, I think sort of a follow-up question that had been submitted previously to this. It's going to be put out to all our panelists to discuss, maybe again, a follow-up to the education concern. How can we recognize and help the graduating class, including those unable to graduate? How do we handle this lack of new employees in the workplace? Michael?
So again, the embracing of technology and allowing the interaction with those people that are trying to enter the profession are concerned of whether they're going to be able to find a job or not. Even if it's just a simple phone conversation or a phone interview. Again, we're going to come through the other side of this. Hopefully, hopefully the economy bounces back quickly. There are some disturbing, models out there that have 18 plus months before we get back to early 2020 economic levels. But there's going to be a lot of younger people within our profession who are going to be looking for jobs well before then. Again, I don't see this as a situation where we're going to be hiring willy-nilly. I think fiscal responsibility over the next 18 to 24 months is going to be critical for small businesses. But again, I think, as John mentioned, there's a lot of other ways that we can provide help, mentorship, support. Even if it's just answering questions from these people, from people who are looking for jobs or graduating. I too am involved in my first Zoom studio review at University of Buffalo in the coming weeks. I'm just kind of curious to see what these students have been putting together. Again, part of the rationale for my involvement in these is not only giving back to a university system that was very helpful to me, but it's also to see the talent that's out there. I think the best thing we can do is reassure them that they're in the right profession. They're going to get a job. Unfortunately, it may not be as quick as fast as they hope, but we're all going to get through this.
That's for sure, Michael. Thank you.
I teach at a local college here as well, and I know that one thing that we are seeing that even our capstone project has been portfolio reviewed by Zoom this time. Students are graduating in our college, but that's the nature of things we are doing our portfolio reviews via Zoom. Even we do a whole gallery submission of capstone projects, which happen through Zoom this time.
I saw a comment here by Matthew Myers, and Matt, thank you for being online with us. We also, our interns, both of them are at UB. Actually, one's about to go to grad school at Michigan. They're very talented. They've been leading us in Revit training on a weekly basis. We had started that before this whole New York State pause thing, pause situation, because it was a great way for them to learn the platform we work in. Now it's kind of twofold. Not only is it skills expanding in that the simple requirement is that you teach us something in Revit that we don't already know or you didn't know before this, but it's keeping us in contact with each other.
Thank you, Michael. I think we've run out of time, unfortunately. This really went quick, but I'd like to thank Bonnie and Michael and John for their participation today and offering their expertise, and for all our attendees. As I mentioned, we're going to get to these questions one way or the other, get some answers, see if we can. But we're going to do this again very soon. And I'd like to thank, AIA New York State, Georgie, Molly and staff, Emma, everybody for the great job that they've been doing, keeping us informed through this crisis in our field of architecture. So everybody stay well and healthy, and we will see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. There's also a survey in the chat box if you'd like to go there and take a survey about today's course. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Anyone, just please feel free to email us if you have any questions. I know there's a couple of topics we didn't get to related to time. No problem. We'll answer the email.
We could have a happy hour.
You're more than welcome to join us.
Enough people left.
Bob, thank you very much. You're a great MC.
Thank you, Michael. No, I appreciate it. Thank you.
And I love that voice, man. And your knowledge, you know that.
Yeah, right. Thank you.
And Dennis, happy hour Friday. Well, more than welcome.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Yeah.
See you guys.
Okay.